It all started on a cold Saturday morning in Minneapolis. A confrontation on a city street turned deadly. A U.S. citizen was shot and killed by a federal Border Patrol agent. And what happened next set off a massive clash, pitting state leaders directly against the federal government. So let's break down exactly what happened and why this one single incident had such huge consequences.
All right, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the fatal encounter itself. Then we're going to get to know the man at the center of all this. After that, we'll dive into the two completely conflicting stories of what happened, look at the crazy legal showdown that followed, and then finally, we'll connect it all to the bigger picture.
Okay, so let's set the scene here. This wasn't some random event that happened out of the blue. It all went down during a really controversial federal immigration crackdown called Operation Metro Surge. And that operation brought federal agents, including Border Patrol, into major U.S. cities to carry out enforcement actions.
So let's just start with the one single fact that absolutely no one disputes. On that Saturday morning, Alex Jeffrey Pretti, a 37-year-old American citizen, was killed by multiple gunshots fired by a federal agent.
And you know what? This all happened incredibly fast. I mean, we're talking minutes. Around 9 a.m., federal agents were on the scene. Protesters, including Alex Pretti, were there too, monitoring them. By 9:05, there's a confrontation. It blows up into a physical scuffle. And just about 30 seconds later, shots are fired. And Alex Pretti is dead.
But to really get the full impact of this story, you have to understand who Alex Pretti was. Because honestly, the details of his life just make the violence of his death that much more shocking.
So who was this guy? Well, Alex Pretti was an ICU nurse at the local VA hospital, a union member who literally cared for our nation's most critically ill veterans. He had no criminal record to speak of, just a few traffic tickets. He was also a lawful gun owner with a permit to carry, and he had become pretty active in protesting federal immigration operations in his city. Friends described him as just a passionate outdoorsman who was really upset by what he was seeing happen in his community.
And this quote right here from his colleague, Dr. Asma Shaukat, this really gets to the heart of the public outcry. She called him the sweetest, kindest, gentlest soul. And it's this image, right? The image of a gentle caregiver that creates such a massive divide when you put it up against the official story of his final moments.
And that brings us right to the core of the conflict. Two totally different stories about what happened that day. On one side, you've got the Department of Homeland Security, and on the other, you've got bystander videos and witness accounts.
The whole thing, the entire controversy, really just boils down to 30 critical seconds. So the question is, what really happened in that chaotic scuffle that led to a man being shot 10 times?
Okay, let's look at this side by side because it's pretty wild. The DHS claims Pretti brandished a handgun, but videos and witnesses? They say he was holding a phone. DHS says he violently resisted and attacked officers, but witnesses say he was already pinned to the ground by 6 agents and was just trying to shield another protester. And then there's the biggest point of all. DHS says the shots were fired in self-defense, but video analysis seems to show that an agent had already secured Pretti's handgun before the other agent shot.
And this was the official federal narrative, put very bluntly by the DHS secretary herself. She basically painted Pretti as a domestic terrorist who, in her words, showed up looking to kill law enforcement.
But wow, the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, he fired right back, calling the federal account nonsense and flat-out lies. And he said the reason he was so sure was because of the bystander videos, and that right there, that set the stage for a showdown. And this was not just a war of words. The conflict immediately blew up into a full-blown legal and jurisdictional crisis, pitting the state of Minnesota directly against the federal government in Washington, D.C.
I mean, the escalation was immediate. First, federal agents literally physically blocked state investigators from accessing the crime scene. So what does Minnesota do? The state's attorney general turns around and sues the Department of Homeland Security. And then, in a move that is just incredible, a federal judge steps in and issues a temporary restraining order, legally blocking the federal government from touching or destroying any evidence from the shooting.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second, because the shooting of Alex Pretti wasn't just a local tragedy. It quickly became a national flashpoint for these huge debates about federal power, about the right to protest, and about public safety.
And to really feel the tension on the ground, you have to know this wasn't an isolated event, not even close. In less than a month, this was the third shooting involving federal immigration officers in Minneapolis, and 2 of them, including Pretti's, were fatal.
So what was going on? Well, it was all happening under this umbrella program called Operation Metro Surge. This was a Trump administration policy that sent federal agents, including Border Patrol, who usually work at the border, deep into American cities for immigration raids. It was this very policy that put these federal agents and local protesters on a collision course.
And all of this brings us to one final, just haunting question from the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey. It cuts right through all the legal battles and the policy debates, and it forces us to focus on the human cost. It leaves us all wondering, where is the line between security and our safety?